The Miami Hurricanes have shown us heart and perseverance. Cam Ward has given us some Heisman moments, but can we please stop with the nail biters every single week?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. And there is such a thing when you're 6-0. I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County on Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, we will talk about whether or not Miami is going to fall victim to the bye week curse. In case you haven't noticed, the Hurricanes don't typically win after the bye week. They've got a bye week coming up this week. We will talk about the incredible season Xavier Restrepo is having. This guy is chasing all-time Miami numbers. I hope you appreciate what number 7 has brought to the Hurricanes for the past 4 years, but want to talk about how Miami can sharpen up because, yes, we're so happy that they're winning football games, and I do not take 6-0 for granted, and I so much appreciate the big comeback against Virginia Tech, coming back from 25 points down in the second half to pull off one of the most improbable wins you could map up against Cal, which Miami just did on the road this past weekend. But these close games have shown us some weaknesses. They've shown us some things that Miami has not done well, basically for the first half or the first 3 quarters of these games. Mario Cristobal, Miami's head coach, made his weekly appearance on radio on the Joe Rose Show this morning, and he talked about some of the issues. Quote, "We have to clean a lot of stuff up. There's a lot of routine stuff that's head-scratching," he said. Over the last couple of weeks, there's technique and fundamental and discipline issues, aspects which have deteriorated, whether it be from wear and tear, injury. There should be no excuse. You have to find a way to tighten up these things. And that's what this bye week is for, he says. We have to attack and address those things while resting up the team. The bye week, we have to do a great job using this bye week because we have some really good games coming up. You don't want these crazy nail biters all the time, he said. I agree, Coach. We feel we can be good enough to take control of games in the second half. It just so happens sometimes you have to find a way, he said. He continued, at the end of the day, Coach said, let's get back to what football is. It's a 4-quarter game, right? It's 4 quarters. It's 60 minutes plus overtime if necessary. And all our guys kept saying, we're going to do this. Just keep fighting one play at a time. And that's one of those things where, you know, we've certainly learned, and Miami, they scored touchdowns in each of their final 3 drives against Cal. In Cal's final 3 drives, Miami, the defense did eventually wake up, and they held Cal to 2 punts and a Kiko Mauinoa interception to end the game. So Hurricanes didn't play well for anywhere close to 50 minutes, but for about, or 60 minutes, I should say, didn't play well, but for about 18 minutes, they played exceptionally good football and did enough to win. And of course, a big part of that was Cam Ward, who in the fourth quarter, Cam Ward throws for 250 yards. In the fourth quarter, Cam Ward accounted for 277 yards of total offense. And that, of course, came after missing some throws and in the first half not taking some checkdowns that were there. He was going for the jugular on every play. You don't need to do that. He did settle in the second half. He also, first play of the second half, threw a catastrophic pick 6. That throw should have never been made, quite frankly. But Ward, mentally, is never out of a game. Short memory. He's able to correct his mistakes late. Here's what Cristobal said about Cam Ward. On Ward, he knew it was a matter of time before he started seeing the field well. If we gave him enough time, and we did. That's a good point by Coach, because the pass protection got a lot better in the second half. Then he started going to work, and guys started making plays. The guy is an alpha dog. He's super resilient. He takes hard coaching, and he's even harder on himself. When you talk about receivers making catches as well, The poor first half, I don't want to put that all on Ward offensively. The defense, of course, was a disaster in the first half, but I don't want to put all of the poor offensive first half on Ward either, because how many catchable balls were dropped early in that game? Even Restrepo, who obviously usually catches everything, and Sam Brown had a lot of inconsistencies in the game at receiver. So not all of that was on Ward, but when Miami needed it most, those final really 4 or 5 drives of the game, suddenly everything was getting caught. I'm a big fan, as you guys know, of Isaiah Horton and the way he's made himself, one of the better receivers in the entire country with the work that he's put in, even from last year to this year. And, Miami is very, very lucky to have Xavier Restrepo, and very lucky to have tight ends like Miami has. I mean, Elijah Arroyo is having his big season, his coming out party this year. Defensively, some guys who did make some big plays. I have already this week shouted out Simeon Barrow. I thought Simeon was probably my defensive MVP, had 2 tackles for loss and an impactful sack in the game. He had one of Miami's 2 sacks in the game. Ruben Bain had a half sack out of Miami's 2 sacks in the game. Wesley Besaint, some call it targeting. I called it a violent football play, but made a big hit. Mario Cristobal talked about the impact that Ruben Bain and Wesley Besaint had in the game. And of course, for Bain, that was the first action he's seen this season since the first defensive series against Florida. Had played 3 snaps all year before he got the start, and ended up playing pretty well on the road at Cal. Cristobal said about Bain's return, that's a different maker. That's a difference maker. Just watch the film and watch some of the way he launches people and the way he just destroys pockets and plays with great effort. It's great to have him back. On Wesley Besaint, he said, great hit, great tackle, sent energy up through our entire sideline on that big hit that was not called a targeting, by the way. He sent shockwaves through the stadium, Cristobal said when asked about the hit. It was awesome. And something that I don't think Cristobal, I'm not sure if he talked about it this morning on Joe Rose, but he did say this after the game at Cal. Because remember, Miami's heading into the bye week before they come out of it against Louisville. And I know Louisville's lost 2 straight games. That's still a darn good football team. And they have played well all season long, even though, yes, they have consecutive losses. Notre Dame on the road, and then SMU at home. SMU looks really good so far this year. Miami won't see them in the regular season. I guess there's an outside shot you could see them in the ACC championship game, but it would probably be Clemson if you do get there. But SMU has been really good this season. But coming out of that bye week, Mario Cristobal, for what it's worth, said that they expect Jalen Rivers, Miami's starting left tackle, and Elijah Alston, one of Miami's top edge rushers, back after the bye week. And I hope that's true for both. I certainly hope it's true for Rivers, because Rivers, we haven't seen him since the opening game against Florida, and we could really use left tackle 1 back out there. So I want to give you guys, when we come back, my four biggest areas that Miami must improve upon. Heading into the rest of the schedule, we're at the midway point of the season. There's not that many undefeated, especially 6-0 teams left in the entire country. So let's be thankful for where Miami is, but also be self-aware that if you want to finish the job this year, if you want to win all the remaining games on your schedule, you can't expect to be pulling out double-digit comebacks in the fourth quarter every single week. You have to get better. You have to get sharper. Otherwise, you're not going to be 12-0. You're not going to be in the college football playoff. You can't rely on miracles every single week. So I want to talk about the 4 biggest areas that we need to see, and I need to see improvement from Miami coming out of that bye week, which will be valuable to get our health back. But then, of course, we do get a question. We're going to answer some questions from Locked On Canes insiders about, in Miami's case, is the bye week actually a good thing? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And if you're a small business owner, you're only getting started with LinkedIn Jobs. I'm telling you, this thing works, folks. I've gotten jobs through LinkedIn Jobs before. And when you're hiring, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. Because in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for making this Monday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure for your next listen, you're checking out me and Kenton Gibbs on Locked On ACC. We did talk. I defended that no targeting call that they didn't call on Wesley Bissaint. Kenton Gibbs was telling me it was surefire targeting. I stood for the honor of the University of Miami on today's episode of Locked On ACC. So make sure you check that out free wherever you get your podcasts, free on YouTube. Much like this show, it's part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. So, all right, big areas that I need to see Miami improve upon after the bye week, because you've got what I would argue, despite the fact that they're coming off 2 straight losses, Louisville might be the toughest game left on your schedule, if not that one. Syracuse, I know they've had uneven performances. They lost to Stanford a couple weeks ago, which was unexpected, but Syracuse just got a nice win on the road against ranked UNLV. That was really good for them, so that's not going to be a cakewalk either. You know, Georgia Tech just beat Duke, who was 5-0 heading into that game. You've got both of those teams left on your schedule. So number one for me, Miami needs to return to playing complementary football. Neither side was doing their part until late in the second half. We talked a lot about that with our guy Rudy in yesterday's recap episode. Number two, I probably could have put this as number one if we're being honest, but coverages and assignments for Miami's defensive backs, they need to be internalized and they need to be executed, because the big issue that I saw in the first half, really into the third quarter of that Cal game, was Miami's defensive backs looked lost at times, and Cal took full advantage. It's not normal to give up 4 passing plays of more than 50 yards in the same game. That's not normal. That's not supposed to happen. No matter who you could be going up against an offensive juggernaut, and Cal was not an offensive juggernaut before that game. You're not supposed to give up 4 plays of 50-plus passing yards. Miami has a lot to fix and a lot of assignments that need to be internalized for the defensive back. So that, to me, is probably the number one assignment during the bye week. Number 3, team discipline still needs to improve. And unfortunately, early in the year, we really thought Jacoby George had been making strides when it came to his discipline. Although lately we've seen some of those flags coming in for those 15-yard penalties. So this, and it's not even just him. And I know sometimes these are bad calls. ACC officials are going to do what they do, but Miami was penalized 9 times for 110 yards in that Cal game. And that seems to be about average numbers for them penalty-wise. Ever since the Florida game, they were very disciplined. Since then, nope. We need to improve that. Like, you can't be spotting the other team 110 yards and committing 9 penalties. It's no good. Number 4, consistency with ball security. Now, I know you can't really criticize Cam Ward too much because he's unbelievable, but you certainly can, for the past 2 weeks, put it under the microscope that Miami has turned it over way too many times. Ward committed 4 turnovers over the past 2 games. The most recent of those was, a pick 6 that he threw in the third quarter against Cal. Had 3 turnovers the week prior against Virginia Tech. So that efficiency has to improve. Okay. Now, someone who doesn't necessarily need to improve, just keep doing what you're doing, is Xavier Restrepo. We have to talk about what he's about to do this year, because he might even get this done the next game against Louisville, because right now Xavier Restrepo has in his career 2,465 career receiving yards at Miami. He has just passed, in the last game, he passed Michael Irvin's 2,423 career yards. And sidebar, I love how Mike Irvin, playmaker, has been on the sideline for these last couple of games. His energy is infectious. That guy, much like Cam Ward, he never gives up hope. Irvin knew Miami was going to come back and win both of these last two games, and I think he's a good luck charm. I know some people say, well, maybe if he wasn't on the sidelines, we wouldn't have had those big deficits. No, I'm going to say Michael Irvin is a good luck charm. I want to see him on the sidelines every single game from here on out. Although hopefully, the next couple times we see him on the sideline, it's comfortable wins, blowout wins, rather than big comebacks. But Xavier Restrepo has passed playmaker on the all-time Miami receiving list. So Restrepo is now third on Miami's all-time list. He's trailing Reggie Wayne, who's got 2,510 career receiving yards, and Santana Moss, 2,547. So you do the math, folks. Restrepo is less than 100 yards away, 100 receiving yards, less than that away from becoming Miami's all-time leading receiver. He's going to shatter that this year, obviously. He comes off, 177 yards just in this past game. He might get there against Louisville. Xavier Restrepo might break that record in the upcoming game, and I love that. And we get this comment from our guy ND Hater 85, Notre Dame Hater, on our Locked On Canes Insiders group. He says, I know the midseason MVP is Cam Ward, rightfully so. However, I don't think it's a runaway, he says. Xavier Restrepo has been monumental in crucial situations, particularly on fourth down. Just wanted X to get the recognition he deserves. 1,000%. That 77-yard catch and run that he had against Cal, that play reminded me of the Willis McGahee screen pass catch against Florida State back in 2002 that set up Miami's comeback win in that one. Restrepo's 77-yard catch the other night set up Miami's comeback victory. The catch that he made against Virginia Tech on fourth down on his back has got to go down as one of the all-timers. So, yeah, no doubt. Xavier Restrepo is, it's hard to, like you said, eclipse Cam Ward, who's, top 3 for the Heisman Trophy right now. But Xavier Restrepo is in that mix for Miami's team MVP this year. Let's talk about the pace that Ward is on as well, because he's putting up career numbers. Like, I think the second season he had it Incarnate Word, it's going to be hard to equal that, although that FCS opposition. But for Power 4, like Cam Ward is on a career pace. He already has over 2,200 passing yards. That's on pace for his best season. He's on pace for 4,400 yards plus this year. And that's also on pace to shatter the single season Miami record, which is a little over 3,600 passing yards from Bernie Kosar back in 84. So Ward is on pace for about 4,400 plus passing yards. So far, Ward has 20 touchdown passes already to 5 interceptions. He threw 25 touchdowns last year to 7 INTs at Washington State. So the touchdowns should be way up. The interceptions will probably be a little up from last year. Although if I want to be really greedy, I'll say, hey, Ward, if you only want to throw maybe 1 or 2 more interceptions for the entire rest of the season, I wouldn't complain if you want to keep that number to where it was at Washington State. But the touchdowns will be way up this year. So the ratio is also going to be up, as he's got a 4-to-1 ratio right now of touchdowns to interceptions. That's pretty good. Ward's completion percentage is just a hair under 70, is at like 69.2%. That is on pace for a career high. His previous career high was about 66% last year at Washington State. So his completion percentage has gone up this year as well. So that's why Ward is currently on track to maybe be at New York for the end of the year for the Heisman ceremony. There's obviously a lot of season left to play, but he is certainly on track for that. Let's take some questions from the Locked On Canes insiders. If you guys want to try it out, just click the link in the show description below. Become a Locked On Canes insider. You get text messages from my phone to your phone, breaking news, recruiting updates, one-on-one questions and answers. We're answering questions on the show from you guys. Try it free for 14 days. Then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Give you a lot of added value on there on the insiders chat. Jake says, hey, I'm glad we keep winning, but sooner or later, I'm not going to make it to the end of these games. Why do you think Miami keeps coming out so flat? Do you think the start time or long travel had anything to do with how the game went? I'm going to say the start time didn't have anything to do with it because when it came like fourth quarter time, where it was, their body clocks were around 1:30 to 2:30 in the morning. Miami was the fresher team out there. Although you notice, 1:30 in the morning, that's when the parties start in Miami. So maybe the time change wasn't as impactful as some people think. I'm going to say that in the case of Cal, who had an extra week to prepare for Miami, looked incredibly prepared when it came to exploiting the aggressiveness and sometimes over aggressiveness of Miami's defense. Cal looked incredibly prepared for that with those fake screens that they were running. Like they were really exploiting Miami's aggression. So I thought that was very good coordination by Mike Blush, their offensive coordinator, who, at least in the first half, he seemed to out scheme Miami's defensive coordinator. So that was very good for them. And, you know, they also were, I'm sure, energized by that's, I've watched a handful of Cal games over the years. Their stadium is usually very empty and apathetic. That was an incredible crowd. Like they came out ready for Miami. They came out ready to play. So I don't know, and I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling it like it is. Miami should have been better, but I think that those were some of the reasons why Cal looked so much better than Miami did out the jump. Oh man, I want to talk about a couple of media narratives on the other side, and if the bye week curse is going to bite Miami again, because Miami has the bye week before traveling out to the Ville in a couple of weeks. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're nowhere near done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. There's many reasons why the only ticket app that I use is Game Time. I'm getting the best deals, especially last minute. The prices tend to go down shortly before the events at Game Time. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm looking at tickets in our area coming up. You can watch the Boston Bruins at the Florida Panthers this week, $57. You can get $1 tickets for Atlanta Hawks at Miami Heat preseason coming up in a few days. $95 tickets later this year for the New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. That's always a big ticket. All the New Yorkers come down for that. So I'm telling you guys, check out the Game Time app. You'll be happy you did. Game Time has a new awesome feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the all-in pricing feature. It shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and most importantly, use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making this Monday Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We get this one from Mr. Valentine, who says, hey, what's up with the media narrative? He says, for example, Miami doesn't play their best for 2 weeks, but they still find a way to win. But the media narrative is, what's wrong with Miami? Then he writes, Alabama gets beaten up by Vanderbilt. Then the media narrative is, well, Vandy played great, but Alabama, they're going to make the playoffs still, and blah, blah, blah. He says, it's very annoying to see how certain teams are covered. Thanks for Mr. Valentine. I'm not surprised. Now, first of all, even though Nick Saban is no longer there, Alabama, based on what they've done for the past 17 years, they get a benefit of the doubt that Miami's not going to get. Also, the SEC gets a benefit of the doubt that the ACC is not going to get. And this wouldn't just be a Miami thing, although it's very much a Miami thing because they love to hate on Miami. But I think if any like contending ACC team gets upset, suffers a big upset, the narrative is always going to be up fraud. Whereas in the SEC, a big SEC team gets upset by, Vanderbilt, who's historically been a bottom dweller. The narrative is, oh, by God, the SEC is so great. Anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday. That's the narrative there. That's certainly not the narrative in the ACC or probably not the Big 12. It's very much an SEC narrative and it's annoying because, a good ACC team almost loses to a not so good ACC team. Up fraud alert, where, a great SEC team loses to Vanderbilt and, oh, the SEC is so amazing. That's just what it is. And bottom line, if Miami can keep winning, it's not going to be a problem at the end of the year. Just keep winning. Just keep taking care of your business. We get this question from Stephen C., who says, do you think we are able to make the necessary adjustments to stop these big plays? If so, how? Yeah, I think the big thing to me is because it looked more like against Virginia Tech, the tackling was really bad. The tackling looked not perfect, but a lot better against Cal. So I think there were some physical adjustments made. I really thought, you guys can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I thought the errors against Cal were more mental and assignment errors. So I would hope that stuff is more easily coachable and fixable. When it comes to Lance Guidry, I trust Guidry to make adjustments. Like, he had to make a lot of adjustments last year when Miami's defensive line was really banged up, went to a 3-3-5, and Miami had some success. So I think you give Guidry an extra week to kind of scheme. I think that some of these things are fixable, but it's been alarming. Like, the defensive back play has been alarming the last couple of weeks. So there's no doubt there's something to address there, or else you're going to lose some games the rest of this year. You are. We get this one from our guy Quasi, who says, do you think the bye week curse is real? We have a tendency of coming out flat and losing off the bye week. I went back into recent Canes history because I wanted to see when's the last time Miami won a game coming out of a bye week. Didn't happen last year. Didn't happen in 2022. Didn't happen in 21. Didn't happen in 2020, 2019, 2018. And then when I got to 2017, I'm thinking, surely this was the year Miami won after a bye week, because they started that season 10-0. They didn't. Miami didn't have a true bye week that year because they had there was a hurricane that came through, or at least was supposed to come through that year. And so they had a game. One game was canceled against Arkansas State, and then another game against Florida State was postponed till later in the year. And so they didn't have like their planned bye week that year. So technically Miami did not win even that year coming out of bye. It was 2016. 2016 was the last time Miami officially won a game after a bye week. So we're on an 8-year skid. But to answer your question, I think the DNA of this team is different. Miami would not have, in previous years, would not have come back to win either of the past 2 games the way that they did. That would have been 2 losses. You would be 4-2 right now, not 6-0, just based on the team DNA. So I've got to hope that applies to coming out of a bye week either. And even though, like, I know Hurricanes fans get kind of spooked by bye weeks because of the recent history, you still need this, right? You're trying to get Jalen Rivers back, who hasn't played since the first game. Ruben Bain came back, but I'm sure he can still benefit from a little more time. Even a lot of the guys who have been playing, I'm sure, are playing with, minor issues, and they could use a little extra time off. We'd like to see Elijah Alston hopefully back after the bye week. Certain injury. I'm not sure at what point, hopefully sooner than later, we're going to see guys like Ryan Rodriguez and Damari Brown, who both got injured the first game, if we can see them back at some point this year. But, I still think the bye week is a good thing. And hopefully Cam Ward has that mentality where he's not going to let you lose coming off the bye week. So I hope it's a little bit different this year. We get this one. This is more of an observation that says, hey, after the rewatch, Cal really only scored on things like fake screens and trick plays that took advantage of our aggressiveness. So it wasn't as bad as it seemed, he said. You could look at it that way. On the flip side, we still need to be a little bit more aware when we're being aggressive, because if kind of the book is out on how to take advantage of Miami defensively, then that still means we have adjustments to make the rest of the year. We get this observation. Hey, just as Mario says, we're 1-0 after every win. Maybe they should just start every game down 25 points. That would be too easy. Because it's like if you start the game down 25 points, that seems easier than, being 25 points down in the third quarter. So you might be on to something there. Just play like you're down 25 to start every single game. Oh, man, I appreciate you guys with the awesome questions. We'll probably answer more questions throughout the week on Locked On Canes. Make sure you subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Make sure you're supporting Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does an awesome job. Locked On ACC with me and Kenton Gibbs. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow. We're going to have the Truth Teller tomorrow, Truth Teller Tuesday, and a special guest is going to be joining us. We'll talk to you then on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.